Have you ever wondered why no matter how hard you try, your life keeps repeating the same patterns? What if I told you the secret to real change isn't out there? It's already inside you. Today, we're diving into how focusing within and realigning your energy can completely transform your reality. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll discover a powerful method to take control of your life, your emotions, and your future. And make sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Let's create a community of transformation together. If you want to change your life, you must first become aware of what you are practicing every single day, because whether you realize it or not, you are always rehearsing something. You are rehearsing thoughts, you are rehearsing emotions, you are rehearsing states of being. And the body, designed to learn through repetition, begins to believe that whatever you repeat most is who you are. Stress becomes familiar, worry becomes normal, living in anticipation of the worst starts to feel safe. Over time, the body memorizes the past and calls it the present. So the real question is not why your life looks the way it does. The real question is, what emotional state are you living in? Because every thought you think sends an electrical signal into the brain, and every emotion you feel releases a chemical message into the body. Together, they become instructions. Instructions that tell your biology what to expect next. And when those instructions never change, neither does your life. But the moment you stop reacting, the moment you pause and turn inward, something profound occurs. You interrupt the program. You step out of the familiar. You move from living by memory into living by intention. When your attention is no longer scattered across problems, people, and circumstances, energy stops leaking from you. And when energy stops leaking, it begins to organize itself in new and intelligent ways. In that inner stillness, you are no longer defined by the past. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer the same person. This is where transformation begins. Not by force. Not by effort. But by changing your state of being. When you choose to feel gratitude without a reason, when you generate inspiration before anything external changes, you are teaching your body emotionally that the future you desire is already happening. The body doesn't know the difference between a real life event and an internally created experience. It responds the same way. New neural circuits begin to fire. New chemistry flows through your system. Genes associated with healing, growth, and regulation begin to switch on. As your heart and brain move into coherence, the nervous system shifts out of survival and into balance. Order replaces chaos, clarity replaces confusion. Your energy becomes steady, intentional, and powerful. And now, instead of chasing outcomes, you become the signal. Life begins to respond to you differently, not because you forced change, but because you became someone new from the inside out. Your personality is shaping your personal reality in every moment, because your personality is made up of how you think, how you feel, and how you behave, and those three elements are constantly signaling your body and your environment about what to expect next. If you think the same thoughts every day, those thoughts become automatic. If you feel the same emotions every day, those emotions become familiar. And when thoughts and emotions repeat long enough, they condition the body to live in a predictable state of being. That state of being then influences the choices you make, the actions you take, and the experiences you continue to create. Most people believe their thoughts are harmless and their emotions are justified, but the body does not see them that way. The body is a record of the past. It memorizes emotional experiences and runs them as programs. When you wake up feeling the same way you did yesterday, your body is already living in the past before your day even begins. That emotional state narrows perception, limits awareness, and filters reality so that you continue to notice only what matches who you've been. Over time, this creates a closed loop where the personality keeps reaffirming the same personal reality. This is why change feels so uncomfortable. The moment you decide to think differently, the body resists. It prefers the familiar chemical state, even if that state is stress, anxiety, or dissatisfaction. The discomfort you feel when you try to change isn't failure. It's the body signaling that it has not yet caught up with the mind. And if you surrender at that moment, you reinforce the old personality and return to the same reality. Real transformation begins with awareness. When you notice your habitual reactions without judging them, you begin to loosen their grip. When you observe your emotional responses, instead of becoming them, you reclaim energy that was once unconsciously spent. This awareness creates a pause, a gap between stimulus and response, And in that gap lies freedom. That is where choice is born. As you intentionally practice new thoughts and elevated emotions, you are no longer signaling the past. You are rehearsing a new self. The body begins to respond to these signals, rewiring neural circuits and reconditioning emotional patterns. Over time, your internal state becomes more coherent, more regulated, and more intentional. And as your personality shifts, your perception shifts, opportunities appear where none existed before. Relationships change. Circumstances reorganize. Not because the world magically transformed, but because you did. Your personality no longer creates the same reality. It begins to create a new one. Most people are living in familiar emotional states, without ever realizing how deeply those states are shaping their lives. From the moment they wake up, they return to the same feelings they felt yesterday: stress, worry, frustration, anticipation, guilt, or longing. These emotions feel personal and justified, but in truth, they are rehearsed patterns. Over time, the body becomes so accustomed to these emotional states that they begin to feel normal, even comfortable. The body doesn't distinguish between emotions that serve you and emotions that limit you. It only recognizes what is familiar and predictable. When an emotional state is repeated often enough, the body becomes chemically conditioned to it. Stress hormones surge so regularly that calm begins to feel unfamiliar. Anxiety becomes a baseline. The body starts to crave the very emotions that exhaust it, because they are known. This is how people become emotionally addicted to their past. Even when nothing stressful is happening, the body generates stress, because it has learned that this is who it is. In this way, people are not responding to life as it is, they are responding to memory. Living in familiar emotional states narrows perception. When you are emotionally conditioned to fear or lack, you unconsciously scan your environment for proof that supports those feelings. You notice problems faster than possibilities. You interpret neutral situations as threats. You expect disappointment before anything even occurs. This expectation feeds the same emotional response, and the cycle continues. The future becomes a repetition of the past, not because of fate, but because the emotional state never changes. The challenge is that these emotions often feel like identity. People say, "This is just who I am," without realizing that who they are is simply what they have practiced. When they attempt to feel differently, discomfort arises. Calm feels unnatural. Joy feels unsafe. Presence feels unfamiliar. The body sends signals to return to what it knows, even if what it knows is suffering. This is why change feels so difficult. Not because it is impossible, but because the body is loyal to familiarity. Awareness is the first interruption of this cycle. The moment you notice that an emotion is habitual rather than situational, you begin to separate yourself from it. You stop being the emotion and start observing it. That observation alone loosens its grip. As attention shifts, energy shifts. And when energy shifts, the body slowly begins to release its attachment to the past. New emotional states may feel unfamiliar at first, but unfamiliar does not mean wrong. It simply means you are no longer living by emotional memory, and that single shift opens the door to a different experience of life. Attention is the steering wheel of energy, because whatever you consistently place your awareness on is what you give life to, emotionally, mentally, and biologically. Attention is not passive, it is an active force. The moment you focus on a thought, a memory, a problem, or a possibility, energy begins to move in that direction. The brain starts firing specific neural circuits, the body releases corresponding chemistry, and the nervous system organizes itself around that focus. Over time, this repeated direction of attention becomes a habit, and that habit becomes a state of being. Most people unknowingly give their attention away all day long. They place it on past regrets, future worries, other people's opinions, external circumstances, and constant stimulation. Each time attention moves outward unconsciously, energy follows it. This is why people often feel drained without understanding why. Their energy is scattered across too many places, reinforcing stress, survival, and reaction. When attention is fragmented, energy becomes incoherent, and the body remains in a constant state of imbalance. The mind does not know the difference between focusing on a real experience and focusing on an imagined one. If you repeatedly place your attention on a fearful thought, the body reacts as if the threat is happening now. Stress hormones are released, muscles tighten, and perception narrows. That single act of attention has now directed energy toward survival. If repeated enough times, the body memorizes that state and begins to run it automatically, even in the absence of an external trigger. When attention is intentionally redirected inward, something powerful occurs. Energy that was once lost to reaction begins to return. The nervous system calms. The brain moves out of chaos and into order. By focusing on breath, sensation, intention, or elevated emotion, you are teaching your system a new pattern. Energy follows this new focus and begins to reorganize the body and mind toward balance and coherence. Sustained attention is what turns possibility into experience. A fleeting thought has little power, but focused attention held over time becomes instruction. It shapes beliefs, emotions, behaviors, and ultimately perception. What you repeatedly attend to becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar starts to feel like truth. This is why two people can live in the same environment and have completely different experiences of life. Their attention is tuned to different frequencies. When you become conscious of where your attention is going, you regain authorship over your energy. You are no longer at the mercy of habit, emotion, or circumstance. You begin to choose where your energy flows, and in doing so, you begin to choose who you are becoming. Attention is not just focus, it is direction, and direction determines destiny. The body must be trained to follow the mind because the body operates on habit, repetition, and emotional memory, not on intention alone. You can decide intellectually that you want to change, that you want to think differently or live differently. But if the body has been conditioned for years to feel the same emotions, it will resist that change. The body has learned who you are through repeated emotional states, and it believes those states define reality. This is why insight alone is not enough. Awareness opens the door, but training the body is what allows you to walk through it. When you try to change your thoughts, the body often responds with discomfort. You may feel restless, impatient, anxious, or even exhausted. That discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is the body signaling that it is stepping out of the familiar. The body has become emotionally addicted to certain chemical states, whether they are stress, control, sadness, or urgency. These states feel normal simply because they are known. When you introduce calm, presence, or elevated emotion, the body perceives it as unfamiliar and attempts to pull you back into the old pattern. This is where most people give up. They interpret the resistance as failure, when in truth it is evidence of change. The body is learning a new emotional language. Just as muscles must be trained through repetition, the nervous system must be trained through sustained emotional experience. The body learns through experience, not logic. It must repeatedly feel the new state, until that state becomes familiar, safe, and embodied. Training the body requires staying present when discomfort arises instead of reacting to it. It means remaining conscious when old emotions surface, choosing not to act them out, and allowing them to pass without judgment. Each time you do this, you weaken the emotional circuitry of the past and strengthen the circuitry of the future. The body begins to realize that it can survive without the old emotional chemistry. Over time, the new emotional state becomes the default. Calm no longer feels strange. Clarity feels natural. Elevated emotions feel safe. The body begins to trust the mind again. When this happens, thoughts, emotions, and actions come into alignment. You are no longer forcing change, you are living it. When the body follows the mind, intention turns into behavior, and behavior turns into reality. You are no longer divided within yourself. You are coherent. And coherence is power, because a trained body supports a clear mind, allowing you to move through life with stability, awareness, and deliberate creation, instead of unconscious repetition. Stillness is the gateway to transformation, because it is the moment when the constant noise of the outer world and the habitual chatter of the mind finally begin to quiet. Most people live in a state of perpetual stimulation, constantly reacting to information, responsibilities, memories, and expectations. In that state, the nervous system remains activated, the body stays in survival, and the mind continues to replay familiar patterns. Nothing new can enter a system that is always occupied. Stillness creates the space where change becomes possible. When you slow down and become still, you interrupt the momentum of unconscious habits. You stop feeding the same thoughts with attention and the same emotions with energy. In that pause, the body begins to relax its grip on the past. The stress hormones that once dominated your chemistry begin to subside, and the nervous system shifts toward balance. This shift is not merely mental, it is biological. The body starts to move out of defense and into repair, regulation, and growth. Stillness allows you to observe rather than react. Instead of being pulled by every sensation, emotion, or thought, you become the one witnessing them. This observation creates separation. You are no longer the fear, the anger, or the urgency. You are the awareness noticing them. That separation weakens the emotional charge that has kept those states alive. What you observe without judgment begins to dissolve, because it is no longer being reinforced. In stillness, the brain begins to reorganize. Chaotic, scattered patterns give way to more coherent rhythms. The mind becomes clearer, more focused, and more receptive. This is when new insights emerge, not through effort, but through openness. Creativity arises. Solutions surface. Possibilities that were once invisible become obvious. Stillness is not emptiness, it is fertile ground. As the body grows accustomed to stillness, it learns that safety does not depend on constant vigilance. The absence of reaction becomes a new reference point. Over time, this calm state becomes familiar, and the body begins to trust it. This trust allows deeper emotional patterns to surface and release without overwhelming the system. Transformation happens not by adding more effort, but by removing interference. Stillness removes the interference of habit, memory, and survival. In that quiet inner space, you are no longer defined by who you have been. You are open, present, and available to become someone new. Stillness is not doing nothing, it is allowing everything unnecessary to fall away so something greater can emerge. Elevated emotions are signals of the future, because they carry a vibration that the body and mind recognize as possibility rather than repetition. Most people wait for external circumstances to change before they allow themselves to feel joy, gratitude, love, or inspiration, but in doing so, they remain trapped in the energy of the past. The body has been conditioned to expect life to mirror previous experiences, and as long as emotions are reactions to the outside world, the future remains a reflection of what has already occurred. To create something new, you must generate the emotion first, internally, before it appears externally. When you consciously cultivate elevated emotions, you are sending instructions to the body that a new state of being is possible. Gratitude is not just a feeling. It is a signal that reorganizes your nervous system and chemistry. Love is not just an experience. It is a magnetic force that expands awareness and opens perception. Inspiration is not simply motivation. It is an energetic template for what your body and mind are capable of creating. These emotions are not dependent on circumstances. They are self-generated states that condition the biology to accept a new reality as normal. The body responds to emotion as if it were real, regardless of whether the external conditions have changed. When you feel elevated emotions intentionally, the brain begins to form new neural pathways. The nervous system adjusts its patterns. Hormones and neurotransmitters align with the state you are cultivating. In essence, your internal state becomes a rehearsal for a future that has not yet manifested. You are training your body to exist in a new reality before the external world reflects it. Many people struggle because they wait for validation or evidence before feeling these emotions. They think, I will feel love when my circumstances are perfect. Or, I will feel gratitude when I achieve my goals. But this approach keeps them trapped in the same cycle. True creation begins from within. By generating elevated emotions independently of external input, you break free from the chains of habit and memory. You move from reaction to creation. Sustaining elevated emotions requires practice and consistency. At first, they may feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because the body is resistant to change. But each time you cultivate them, you reinforce new patterns, and the body begins to adapt. Over time, elevated emotions become your baseline. When this occurs, your internal state leads your external reality. What you feel consistently begins to magnetize the circumstances, opportunities, and experiences that match it. In this way, elevated emotions are not only signals. They are the architects of the future. Breaking the emotional addiction to the past is one of the most profound acts of personal transformation, because so much of what we experience in the present is filtered, shaped, and limited by memory. Most people live in emotional patterns that have been rehearsed for years, often decades. These patterns, anger, resentment, fear, guilt, sadness, become comfortable because the body recognizes them as familiar. Even when they create suffering, the body clings to them because they are known. This is what it means to be emotionally addicted to the past. The nervous system prefers repetition over uncertainty, even when repetition causes pain. The first step in breaking this cycle is awareness. You must recognize when you are reacting from memory rather than responding from the present. Emotions that flare up automatically, without conscious choice, are often echoes of previous experiences. When someone criticizes you and you feel anger, when circumstances trigger anxiety or fear, the intensity of that reaction is not only about what is happening now. It is colored by every similar experience you've ever had. The body remembers and relives these emotions as though they are ongoing, reinforcing old patterns instead of allowing new responses. Letting go of these old emotional attachments requires intentional practice. It means consciously observing the emotional response without identifying with it, without justifying it, and without allowing it to dictate behavior. This does not mean suppressing or ignoring the emotion. It means creating a gap between stimulus and reaction. In that gap, freedom exists. In that space, the habitual chemistry of the past no longer controls the body, and the energy previously trapped in reaction can be released. Releasing these emotional patterns frees immense amounts of energy. Energy that was previously tied up in resentment, fear, or self-limiting beliefs is now available to fuel creativity, clarity, and new ways of being. This liberated energy can then be redirected toward growth, purpose, and elevated states of consciousness. The act of letting go is not merely psychological, it is physiological. The body begins to recalibrate, the nervous system stabilizes, and neural pathways for new experiences start to form. Breaking the emotional addiction to the past is not a one-time event, it is a consistent practice of awareness, release, and rehearsal of new states. Each time you resist the pull of memory, each time you choose presence over reaction, you weaken the power of the past and strengthen the authority of your conscious mind. Over time, the body no longer expects the old chemistry, and a new baseline is established. In this way, by letting go of emotional attachment to what has been, you create the conditions for a future unbound by limitation, where your energy flows freely and your life aligns with who you are consciously choosing to become. Coherence creates momentum because it is the alignment of the heart, brain, and nervous system in a state of harmony that allows energy to flow without resistance. Most people live in a state of internal conflict. Thoughts pull in one direction, emotions pull in another, and the body reacts according to habit. This incoherence creates friction within the system, scattering energy, clouding perception, and making intentional creation difficult. When coherence is established, the internal world becomes organized. Thoughts and emotions no longer work against each other, they work together to produce clarity, focus, and deliberate action. The heart and brain communicate continuously through electrical and chemical signals. When they are misaligned, when fear, resentment, or frustration dominate the emotional landscape, the messages sent to the body are chaotic and energy is fragmented. The body responds by remaining in a state of tension, stress, or hyper-vigilance. Incoherence at this level keeps people trapped in patterns of reaction, reinforcing the same outcomes again and again. The more energy is scattered, the harder it is to generate meaningful change. Conversely, when heart and brain synchronize, when emotion and thought are coherent, the body receives signals of stability and trust. Energy that was once diffused becomes concentrated. Momentum builds, not through force, but through alignment. Coherence is not something that happens passively, it is cultivated intentionally. By generating elevated emotions such as gratitude, love, and inspiration while maintaining focused intention in thought, the nervous system shifts from chaos to order. The heart's rhythm stabilizes, breathing slows, and the brain begins to produce patterns associated with creativity, insight, and clarity. This physiological coherence becomes the foundation for intentional creation. It allows action to flow effortlessly, decisions to arise naturally, and perception to expand. Energy no longer leaks into reaction and survival, it is available to support growth, transformation, and manifestation. When coherence becomes habitual, the impact on life is profound. Small intentions gain power, ideas that once felt distant materialize with ease, and the body's health and resilience improve. Coherence acts like a magnet, drawing experiences and opportunities that match the internal state. The more consistent the internal alignment, the stronger the momentum. Life begins to reorganize around the energy you are radiating, rather than around external circumstances. Momentum generated through coherence is subtle yet powerful. It does not rely on force, struggle, or effort. Instead, it emerges from alignment of thought, feeling, and physiology. When you practice coherence regularly, your internal state becomes the engine of creation, propelling you forward in ways that feel effortless yet deliberate. What once required struggle now unfolds naturally, and life begins to respond to the energy you consistently cultivate. This is the power of coherence. It transforms scattered energy into focused momentum, creating a life that mirrors the alignment you have established within. You are not your circumstances because the external world is a reflection, not a definition, of who you are. Too often, people allow events, conditions, and other people's behavior to determine their emotional state, their sense of self, and their reality. They believe that life is happening to them, rather than responding to them. But circumstances are temporary and constantly changing, whereas your inner state is the foundation that determines how life appears. If your identity is tied to circumstances, you are at the mercy of what is outside, vulnerable to chaos, and limited in your ability to create intentionally. Your response to life is more powerful than life itself. Two people can experience the same event, loss, opportunity, conflict, or success, and perceive it entirely differently. One may feel despair, the other may see opportunity. One may feel stuck, the other may feel empowered. The difference is not in the event itself, but in the energy, focus, and interpretation brought to it. Circumstances cannot define you unless you allow them to. You are the observer, the signal, and the energy that shapes how events unfold. When you take responsibility for your inner state, you reclaim authority over your experience. The challenge is that humans are conditioned to react. Emotional memory, past experiences, and social conditioning all create automatic responses. When something goes wrong, the body immediately triggers old patterns: fear, anxiety, defensiveness, or blame. These reactions reinforce the belief that circumstances are controlling you. Breaking this cycle requires awareness and choice. You must pause, notice the habitual response, and intentionally shift your state. In that moment of conscious intervention, you separate your identity from circumstance. You begin to act from presence, rather than reaction. Once you realize that circumstances are feedback rather than identity, your life begins to shift. You are no longer seeking approval, security, or validation from outside sources. Your decisions come from alignment, clarity, and coherence within. The body begins to respond differently because it no longer operates in habitual fear or tension. Energy flows toward creation, not reaction. The more consistently you maintain this inner authority, the less external events can destabilize you, and the more they begin to conform to the energy you radiate. Ultimately, being independent of circumstance does not mean ignoring reality. It means mastering the ability to respond with conscious intention. Your inner state becomes the magnet for experiences, the lens through which life is interpreted, and the foundation for transformation. When your identity is rooted in who you are consciously choosing to be, rather than in what is happening around you, circumstances lose their power. Life begins to respond to your energy instead of dictating it, and you move from reaction to creation, from limitation to possibility. Becoming the experience before it appears is the essence of transformation, because true change begins within long before it manifests in the outer world. Most people wait for evidence before they allow themselves to feel differently. They wait for circumstances to shift, for opportunities to present themselves, or for validation from others. But life does not respond to waiting, it responds to energy. The body and mind cannot differentiate between an experience you are living internally and an experience that has already happened externally. When you feel the reality of what you desire before it manifests, you are sending a signal to the body, the mind, and the universe that this future is already occurring, and that signal begins to shape reality in alignment with it. When you try to change from the outside in, you often encounter resistance. You wait for the perfect conditions, the right timing, or external proof. But those things rarely align perfectly. In contrast, when you embody the feeling of your desired state first, the body begins to respond as though the experience is already real. Neural circuits fire, hormones shift, and the nervous system aligns with the vibration of the future you are creating. This internal rehearsal trains the body to exist in that new state, creating a coherent signal that attracts circumstances, people, and opportunities that match the energy you are radiating. The key to becoming the experience before it appears is sustained attention, combined with elevated emotion. It is not enough to think about the desired outcome, you must feel it. Gratitude, joy, love, inspiration, and confidence act as magnets that pull reality toward the internal state. These emotions condition the body to accept a new possibility as familiar. The more consistently you practice this, the more the body learns that the future you are imagining is not hypothetical. It is the present state you are choosing to inhabit. Waiting for external evidence keeps people trapped in repetition, reacting to what is rather than creating what could be. Embodying the experience first breaks this cycle. It creates a bridge between imagination and reality, aligning thought, emotion, and physiology so that the body no longer resists change. As this alignment deepens, action begins to flow naturally, opportunities emerge effortlessly, and circumstances reorganize to reflect the internal state. Becoming the experience before it appears is not wishful thinking, it is deliberate creation. It is living from the end, feeling the reality you desire, and allowing the body, mind, and environment to catch up. Transformation, in its purest form, begins when you exist internally as the reality you intend to create, long before it is visible externally. Remember, the power to change your life doesn't come from waiting for the world to shift. It comes from becoming the energy of the future you desire, starting now. Focus within, realign your energy, and watch everything around you begin to transform. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, share it with your friends, and comment below what you're going to focus on first. And of course, hit subscribe so you never miss powerful insights that can help you live a more intentional and extraordinary life.